The drone hovered, silent, watching. We are watching. I wasn't being pranked. I was targeted. Family pulled the strings. They had no idea. Revenge was set. It would change everything. My name is Noah Winters, and before I became the pariah of my own family, I was the guy everyone called the fixer. Broken heater in January? Call Noah. Need to borrow $2,000 until Friday? Noah. Lawnmower mysteriously vanished? Noah probably has a backup. I didn't mind until last Christmas, when my brother Felix declared, while wearing a Santa hat and carving the roast, "There's no place at this table for people who don't pull their weight. Some of us are tired of carrying losers." The room went quiet like someone had just farted in church. Except I hadn't even sat down yet. I stood at the doorway, holding a tray of homemade cheesecakes and a box of meticulously wrapped gifts. I laughed, awkwardly. "Ha! Good one, Felix." Mom was the first to speak. "He's serious." Dad wouldn't look at me. My younger sister Lyra did the thing she always does, sipped her wine and stared at the ceiling like she was watching a sitcom from a different planet. I stood there, unsure if I should cry, scream, or throw a cheesecake at the damn wall. Instead, I did what I always do, took the high road. I turned around, got in my truck, and drove off while Let It Snow played on the radio like a final insult. But that wasn't the real betrayal. That came 2 weeks later, when I found out that while I had been saving their asses for years, paying Mom's dental bills, keeping Dad's truck running, helping Lyra out of her credit card debt, and literally buying Felix's kids their school uniforms, they had all co-signed a petition to have my childhood home, which I legally owned, handed over to Felix and his growing family of freeloaders. Their reasoning? Noah doesn't even have kids. He doesn't need the space. You know what I do have? A vintage lemon tree in the backyard that my late grandmother planted before she died. She used to call it the survivor. And that's exactly what I had to become. I didn't retaliate immediately. No. I waited. I watched. And I plotted. One morning, while turning over the compost pile behind my garage, I found something wrapped in a plastic bag, a child's homework folder, Felix's oldest son's, with my name scrawled all over it and Uncle Loser doodled in the margins. But it was the second item that chilled me, a letter written by my mother, and signed, but unmistakably her handwriting, asking my bank to remove me from the deed of the house due to my mental instability and erratic behavior. She forged a psychiatrist's signature. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about entitlement. This was a mutiny. A familial coup d'état. I invited them over for a family mediation session. Told them I was ready to let bygones be bygones and redistribute the wealth. You should have seen Felix's greedy little grin. He even brought a clipboard. They arrived like a sitcom cast, Mom in pearls, Dad with a beer in hand, Lyra still texting someone who doesn't love her, and Felix dressed like a realtor with a god complex. I served lemon tea from the lemons they tried to steal. I had cameras hidden in every corner of the living room. This time, I wanted evidence. Not for court, for revenge. "Let's talk," I said. Felix took over instantly. "Look, Noah, we're not trying to push you out. But we are trying to build a future for the family." "You're trying to steal my house," I replied. "You live here alone." Lyra chimed in. "You don't even fill the space emotionally." Emotionally. What the hell does that mean? Was I supposed to rent a therapist to live in the guest room? "And you know," Mom added, stirring her tea, "Felix's wife, Melanie, is pregnant again. That'll make 7. I nearly choked. 7 kids? Is she trying to start a cult? "She wants a basketball team," Dad muttered. I turned to Felix. "You know what, take the house." Everyone froze. "But," I continued, "you have to agree to my terms. 1 lemon from that tree, only one, must be sacrificed each full moon under my supervision. And you must never, under any circumstance, call me a loser again." Felix blinked. "You're joking." "Am I?" I said, sipping my tea and staring directly into his soul. They didn't go for the lemon clause. Shocking, I know. But things escalated 2 days later when I showed up at the Homeowners Association meeting with an old folder of every illegal renovation Felix had done at his house over the past 5 years. I also passed out screenshots of Lyra's Venmo requests asking me to pay off her secret trip to Tulum. And then I handed out copies of the forged psychiatrist letter. The HOA president, a retired judge, gasped so loud I thought he'd lost a lung. "Looks like your family tree needs a little pruning," he muttered. After my little power move at the HOA meeting where I presented irrefutable evidence of Felix's shady dealings, and my sister Lyra's unreported escapades, I was feeling a little too pleased with myself. Maybe I had gone a bit too far, but what was family for if not drama, right? Still, nothing prepared me for what was coming next. One night, as I was settling into my favorite recliner with a glass of bourbon, because that's how all great stories start, I noticed a weird sound outside my window. A soft hum, like a giant mosquito buzzing in slow motion. It wasn't the usual street noise. I leaned forward, squinting. There, just above my roofline, was a drone. Yes, a drone. And it wasn't just any drone. This one was flying in a perfect circle, hovering at eye level, as if it was waiting for me to notice it. For a moment, I thought I was losing my mind. But then the lights on the drone flickered, and a message blinked across the little screen attached to it. "We are watching." My blood ran cold. I opened the window and stared out, half expecting someone to jump out of the bushes and shout surprise, but nothing happened. It was like the drone itself was the message. It hovered for a few more minutes before rising sharply and disappearing into the darkening sky. I was shook. Who would do something this ridiculous? Then I remembered Felix. The man who once tried to trap me in a shed during our childhood for losing a stupid race he invented. He definitely had the time, the resources, and the imagination to pull something like this off. So, naturally, I called him. But it was Lyra who answered. "Is Felix there?" I demanded. "He's not home," she said, almost too quickly. "Why, what's going on?" "Nothing much, just the fact that one of your drones is flying around my house at this hour, buzzing like a freaking hornet." There was silence on the line for a beat. And then she said the thing that made me realize things had escalated beyond my control. "You saw the drone?" "Yeah, Lyra. I saw the damn drone. What the hell is going on?" Another beat. This time, her voice lowered, a touch of guilt leaking through. "Look, Noah. You need to prepare for the worst. Felix is planning something big. He didn't tell me everything, but he's been acting weird lately." "Weird, you say?" Weird didn't begin to cover it. By the next weekend, the situation was downright surreal. Felix, that idiotic brother of mine, decided to throw a family gathering to discuss the future of the family house. I was more than ready for round two, so I showed up, but not without waging my own war on his backyard. You see, while I didn't have any kids, I did have something better, an oversized flamingo-shaped pool float. And Felix's backyard? It had the most obnoxious pool imaginable. Large, suspiciously new, and way too shallow for anyone who cared about their dignity. But hey, it was Felix's pool. He could throw his perfect family photos in there for all I cared. But me? I had a plan. That flamingo pool float wasn't just an innocent addition to the scene, it was my message. As soon as I arrived, I tossed the damn thing in the pool, like it was an accident. Of course, it wasn't. I wasn't the accidental type. Felix's face when he walked outside to see that flamingo in the pool was priceless. His wife, Melanie, immediately threw her hands up. "What is this?" she shrieked. "This?" I said, grinning. "It's a symbol of how ridiculous all of you are. You're planning on taking my house, you send drones to watch me, and now I'm officially taking over your pool party." Felix, already 50% stressed out about the house, snapped. "You're ruining everything." His face twisted in disgust. "Why can't you just go along with what's best for the family?" "Best for the family?" I repeated mockingly. "Isn't it best for the family that I no longer live like some backup provider for all of you?" Then, as if I was the only sane person left in the room, I pointed at the flamingo. "The flamingo stays, Felix. Deal with it." Melanie's eyes were like lasers. She turned toward Felix and hissed, "Why didn't you just invite him to stay already? He's literally making a point of embarrassing us in front of everyone." "Oh, I'll make it even more embarrassing," I said, half smiling. "You want to take my house? I'll take your backyard." But before I could carry out any more of my plans, Mom strolled in. She was wearing her good pearls, and she had that look on her face. The one that told me she was about to make everything 10 times worse. "You'll all apologize to each other," she said with her typical smug smile. "Felix, Noah, give the flamingo some peace, okay?" Oh, God. She didn't get it. She was about to be the one who started everything. But not before I dropped the next bombshell. As Felix was about to launch into his typical tirade, I calmly stood up. Everyone's eyes followed me as I pulled out the letter I had gotten from a lawyer. It was signed, stamped, and perfectly official. "Before we do any of this family bonding crap," I said, holding up the letter for everyone to see, "this is the official request to have all your names removed from my will and the deed to my house." Felix looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You can't do this," he shouted. "You need to leave some kind of legacy for the family." I put my hands up. "The legacy? Oh, don't worry. It's a legacy of drama, Felix. And trust me, I won't leave you guys anything except memories. And for you? That flamingo. It had been 2 days since I dropped the legal bombshell about removing my family from my will. Felix was furious, Melanie was already plotting her next scheme, and Mom, well, she was doing her usual act of playing the victim while simultaneously acting like this was all somehow my fault. Then, just when I thought things might settle, the drone returned. That's right. The same creepy drone from before was hovering outside my house again. And this time, it wasn't just flying around. It was taunting me. It started low and slow, creeping just above my roofline. I stared at it from my kitchen window, clutching my coffee mug, wondering if I was losing my mind. But then, the message appeared again on its screen. You can't escape us, Noah. Family always wins. I don't know why, but something about that particular message set my blood boiling. I immediately grabbed my phone and texted Felix. Nice try with the drone, buddy. But this is getting old. You think your little surveillance game scares me? No response. Typical. But I wasn't about to let this go. I grabbed the biggest garden hose I could find from the shed, connected it to the outdoor tap, and prepared myself for the most absurd confrontation of the year. The drone hovered. I aimed the hose, and without hesitation, I let it rip. There was a splash of water, and just like that, the drone's camera screen shorted out. It fell straight into my freshly manicured flower bed, looking like it had just made a crash landing on the moon. It didn't move. Good riddance. I stood there in the pouring rain, staring down at the wreckage. It wasn't until I heard the distant sound of Felix's truck that I realized just how quickly things were about to escalate. Felix screeched into my driveway like he was in a NASCAR race, leaping out of the car before it even stopped moving. He stormed toward me, face redder than a tomato. What the hell did you do to my drone? I shrugged, acting innocent. What drone? Oh, you mean the one that was hovering outside my house and filming me like I'm some reality TV star? He looked like he was about to explode, but then, the twist, he spotted the wreckage of the drone in my flower bed. I could see his eyes twitch as his sanity started unraveling in real time. That cost me $2,000, you idiot, he shouted. I looked down at the drone. Honestly, Felix, it wasn't worth $2. You're better off investing in a better hobby, maybe one that doesn't involve spying on your brother. Melanie, who had silently slipped out of the truck, stood behind him, her arms crossed. You've gone too far this time, Noah, she said with that icy tone I hated. You can't keep pushing Felix like this. You'll regret it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before responding. You know what, Melanie? No, I won't regret it. What I regret is sacrificing my life for all of you while you sit there acting like you're above everyone else. This is my house, my life, and you're all a bunch of parasites who don't even appreciate it. At that moment, Felix looked like he was about to throw a punch. But instead, he turned to walk away, muttering something about getting even. It was in that second that I realized just how deep the insanity ran. I had no idea what they'd come up with next, but I knew it was going to be catastrophic. The lemon tree. My grandmother's tree. The one she lovingly tended to until the day she passed. At first, I wasn't sure if I could go through with it. I loved that tree. It was a symbol of everything my grandmother believed in: hard work, perseverance, and family. But when Felix tried to take what was mine, and then made everything worse with his fake concerns about family while draining me of every ounce of energy I had, the tree became a symbol of war. I woke up the next morning with one thought in my mind: revenge. But it wasn't just petty revenge. It was an art form. Felix had taken so much from me: my home, my peace of mind, my trust. But he was about to lose something too. I grabbed my tools, and under the cover of night, I made my way into the backyard. With silent precision, I cut the top branches off my grandmother's lemon tree. Just enough to devastate its shape, but not enough to kill it. It would still survive. But the symbolic message would remain. Then, I decorated the stumps with bright yellow ribbons. Not just any ribbons, but ones with a tag attached that read, "For Felix, a reminder of what happens when you take too much. Signed, the loser." I left it there, and the next morning, when Felix came out to see his precious backyard, he was greeted by a disaster. The look on his face when he saw the mutilated tree was almost comical. Almost. After a few days of Felix glaring at me and storming around, my mom showed up unannounced at my front door. She wasn't crying, which was strange, but she had a look in her eyes that said she was ready to play her final card. "Noah, we need to talk." "I'm listening," I said, stepping aside to let her in. She walked past me, glancing at the lemon tree wreckage in my backyard. This has gone too far," she said quietly. "I know," I replied, crossing my arms. "But maybe you can tell me why Felix tried to take my house. And why you're all so comfortable making me feel like I'm the villain in my own story." For the first time in ages, my mother looked uncomfortable. She opened her mouth as though she wanted to say something, but the words just weren't coming. She sat down and stared at the floor, unsure of where to begin. And then, like a sledgehammer, she hit me with the bombshell. I never wanted Felix to take your house, Noah. I never wanted to choose sides. But your father, he's been hiding something from you. Something important. What? I demanded, leaning in. What are you talking about? She hesitated. Felix wasn't the only one after your house, Noah. I was too. I couldn't wrap my head around it. My mother, the woman who raised me, who had always been the innocent bystander in this family circus, was involved in the plot to take my house. But why? I sat across from her, heart pounding, as she tried to explain herself. But I could tell she was holding something back. Why, Mom? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. Why would you want this? After everything I've done for this family? I paid for Dad's surgery, I covered Felix's debts, and I've been the one keeping things together. Why take my house? She looked up, her eyes filled with guilt and shame. She swallowed hard before speaking. You're not going to like this, Noah, she began. But I had no choice. Your father, he never told you the full story. You see, the house, it was never really yours. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. What do you mean, it wasn't mine? You've always said I was the rightful heir. She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. Your father put the house in both our names after we married. But when things went south with your dad's business, he made a deal. A secret deal, Noah. One that I didn't know about until it was too late. I leaned in, my heart racing. What kind of deal? What are you talking about? It's complicated, but your father, he left a contingency clause in his will that I didn't discover until after he passed. If he were ever to face financial ruin, the house would automatically transfer to Felix. It was a move to protect his family. She paused. And the worst part is, I agreed to it. I felt the floor beneath me collapse. So, you let Felix take my house, knowing it was never really mine? That's why you've been so quiet all these years? Yes, she whispered, barely able to meet my eyes. I didn't want to lose Felix, not after everything he's been through. But I didn't know it would come to this. I never thought Felix would go so far. My world tilted. I had been duped, betrayed, by my own blood. But what was worse? The fact that Felix had no clue about this. The entire time he'd been self-righteously plotting against me, I now realized he wasn't even the mastermind. He was just the pawn. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. The anger inside me had reached a boiling point, and I had to confront Felix. No more games, no more pretense. It was time to bring everything into the open. That afternoon, I walked over to his house, the place he had always tried to make feel like home, but it never was. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I was about to unleash chaos. Felix was sitting on the couch, flipping through a home improvement magazine, while Melanie was fixing something on the stove. The perfect family, ready to tear my life apart. I slammed the door shut behind me, causing both of them to freeze. We need to talk, I said, my voice shaking but steady. All of us. Melanie raised an eyebrow. What now, Noah? You finally come to your senses and want to apologize? I ignored her. It wasn't her I had to worry about. I turned to Felix. It's all over, Felix. You've been played, just like the rest of us. He frowned. What are you talking about? I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I think you know. You and Mom. You have no idea what she's been hiding from you, do you? His confusion morphed into frustration. What are you trying to say? I walked toward him, my fists clenched. The house, Felix. It's never been yours. The will, the clauses. It was never about you. It was about Dad's hidden debts and a deal he made long before you ever even dreamed of moving in. His face went white. What do you mean? He asked again, voice trembling. What are you talking about? I didn't hold back. Mom knew. She knew everything. She knew you were a pawn in a game that she's been playing for years. She gave you a head start because she didn't want to lose her golden boy. Felix's eyes darted around the room, searching for answers that weren't there. Mom would never do that, he said weakly. You're lying. Am I? I snapped. Ask her yourself. You really want to know who's been pulling the strings? It's not me. It's not you. It's Dad's secret financial deals, and you've been his backup plan all along. Just as Felix was about to lash out, I pulled out a sealed envelope from my jacket pocket. The look of horror on his face was priceless. Open it, I said, shoving it toward him. Reluctantly, Felix tore open the envelope and unfolded the papers inside. His eyes scanned the document, his face going pale with each passing word. It was Dad's original will, the one he had hidden from all of us. Felix's shaky hand dropped the papers to the floor. This can't be real. This doesn't make any sense. I grinned. It makes perfect sense. Felix, you've been working under the assumption that the house was always yours, but in reality, the entire time, you were the one being manipulated. Suddenly, I saw something shift in his eyes, fear. Regret. A bitter realization that maybe, just maybe, his perfect family life was about to crumble. And then, Melanie, the ever-calm, cold woman, spoke up. Noah's right, Felix, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I knew about the clause. I didn't want to believe it, but I did. I was as much a part of this mess as anyone. Felix turned to her, disbelief plastered on his face. What are you talking about? She sighed, looking down. Felix, I've tried to keep you safe from all this. But when you started acting so entitled, I knew we were in too deep. I thought maybe it would fix things. But now, I see we're only making it worse. So there it was. The family war, which had been brewing for months, had finally reached its explosive climax. Felix and Melanie stood in shock as they processed everything, and I couldn't help but feel a little vindicated. This time, it wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. Everyone had to face the truth, and the truth hurt. But I wasn't done yet. There was one final twist left. One more thing I had to reveal. Felix stood in my living room, his hands shaking slightly as he tried to process everything that had come to light. Melanie, who had been strangely quiet, was now watching her husband like she wasn't sure whether she should comfort him or run for the hills. You can't just take everything, Noah. Felix finally blurted, his voice rising. You don't understand. This house, this family, it's all I have left. I watched him, completely unimpressed. There was no more sympathy in my heart for this man who had taken advantage of me for years. The last shred of decency I had been holding onto crumbled away. You didn't have it to begin with, Felix, I said, stepping closer to him. This house, this life, it's mine. And if you hadn't been so damn obsessed with playing the victim, you might have realized that sooner. The house was never yours, and you were never the hero of this story. It was always about me. Felix swallowed, the realization dawning on him. His face reddened as if he were about to say something else, but his words caught in his throat. For a split second, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He knew he had gone too far. Then he turned to Melanie. You knew about all of this, didn't you? He asked, his voice trembling. You knew about the house. You knew about the deal. And you didn't say anything? Melanie took a deep breath, her face unreadable. She didn't say anything at first, but then, almost too quietly, she replied, I didn't want to make it worse. You already had everything planned. The house, the kids, your future. I was just trying to keep it all together. I couldn't help but let out a laugh. Keep it together? I repeated, shaking my head. You think this mess can be kept together? You're all playing some twisted game, Melanie. And now, it's falling apart. Felix looked between us, finally seeming to grasp that everything he'd worked for, the future he thought was guaranteed, was now slipping through his fingers. But he couldn't stand to lose. So, naturally, he tried one last desperate attempt. I want a second chance, he said, voice breaking, the facade crumbling. I'll pay you back. I'll make it right. No, I said, cutting him off. You had your chance, Felix. You blew it when you decided to play everyone, including me. You didn't want family, you wanted a handout. He opened his mouth, but the words didn't come out. And in that moment, I saw it. Defeat. Finally, after all these years, Felix understood that he wasn't the center of the universe. He wasn't going to get what he wanted. Not this time. I could feel the weight of the conversation pressing down on us. But there was one last card I hadn't played yet. It was time to reveal everything. Felix, I said, my voice steady, you've spent all this time trying to tear me down, but you've never once asked why Dad left me the house in the first place. Why I got everything. Felix furrowed his brow, confused. What are you talking about? I smiled. I never told you this, but Dad's estate wasn't just about the house. There was a lot more hidden assets, investments, land in another state, and a secret bank account he kept for years. Guess who he left it all to? For a moment, Felix looked confused, his eyes darting between me and Melanie, as if waiting for some punchline. But there was no punchline. Me, I said, the final pieces falling into place. He didn't leave it to you, Felix. He didn't leave it to Mom. He left it to me. All of it. Felix's face turned ghostly pale. What the hell are you talking about? You're lying. Am I? I asked, pulling out a stack of papers from my desk and slamming them down on the coffee table. They were official documents, asset records, bank statements, real estate transfers, everything that proved my claim. I watched Felix's jaw drop as he stared at the documents. I had the upper hand now. For what felt like an eternity, there was only silence. I let Felix absorb the weight of it all. He wasn't going to win this one. There was no way he could come back from this. But then, as if he hadn't already lost everything, Felix did the unthinkable. He lunged at the papers, tearing them in half, his anger bubbling over. "You think this is over?" he shouted. "You think you're better than me?" I stood up, calmly watching him. "It's over, Felix. You've lost. And now you have to face the truth." Suddenly, there was a loud crash as Melanie knocked over a glass of wine, the liquid spilling across the floor. "Felix, stop," she whispered, looking at him with a mix of guilt and despair. "It's over. Just stop." Felix paused. His eyes were wild, like a man who had just lost everything and didn't know where to go next. But it was too late. I walked past him, toward the door. "I'm done with this family. You can all fight over the scraps if you want. I'm taking what's mine." I didn't speak to my mother for weeks. I didn't speak to Felix or Melanie. I let them stew in their self-inflicted misery, knowing they were left with nothing but the fallout of their own actions. Eventually, my sister, Lyra, reached out. She apologized for everything. She knew what Felix had done, and she admitted that Mom had been manipulating everyone, including her. As for me, I moved forward. The house was mine, but it wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my freedom. It was about taking back control of my life and no longer allowing anyone, not even family, to tell me who I should be or how I should live. It's been a year since that final confrontation. I still have the house. My grandmother's lemon tree is thriving again. Felix, well, he's tried to reach out, but I've made it clear that there's nothing left for him in my life. I've rebuilt everything I lost, but more importantly, I've built a new foundation. One that's all mine. I've learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about the people who choose to stand by you, even when the world is crumbling. So, here's my message to you: never let anyone take what's rightfully yours. Sometimes, the only way to win is to walk away and never look back.